Ever wondered why some people vanish without explanation? We've all heard the stories. A friend who suddenly stops returning calls. A partner who becomes distant, then disappears entirely. A colleague who's there one day and gone the next, leaving only an empty desk and unanswered questions. We call it ghosting, vanishing, or simply leaving without a word. But here's the truth most people miss. They didn't leave suddenly. They left silently for a long time, long before someone physically removes themselves from your life. They've already begun the process of leaving. It doesn't happen in a single moment of anger or a dramatic confrontation. It happens in the quiet spaces between conversations, in the moments when they swallow their words instead of speaking them, in the countless times they chose to stay silent rather than risk another misunderstanding. They tried to be understood. They really did. Think about the conversations that never quite landed, the times they explained how they felt, only to be met with defensiveness or dismissal. The moments they shared their needs, only to watch those needs get minimized or forgotten by the next day. Each attempt to communicate was an act of hope, a belief that this time would be different, that this time they would finally be heard. But communication isn't just about speaking, it's about being received. And when someone repeatedly pours their truth into a cup that has no bottom, eventually they stop pouring. They tried to be patient. Patience became their default mode, their survival strategy, their way of keeping the peace. They told themselves that people need time to change, that relationships require compromise, that good things come to those who wait. So they waited. They made excuses for behavior that hurt them. They gave second chances, then third chances, then stopped counting altogether. Patience is often praised as a virtue, and it can be, but there's a shadow side to patience that we rarely discuss. The slow erosion of self that happens when you be patient with everyone except yourself. When you're kind to everyone except the person in the mirror. When you accommodate every need but your own. This kind of patience isn't really patience at all. It's self-abandonment dressed up in noble clothing. They watched patterns repeat. The same arguments circled back around with different words but identical themes. The same promises were made and broken. The same hurt was inflicted, apologized for, then inflicted again. And somewhere in the cycle of hope and disappointment, their expectations began to quietly lower. Not dramatically, but gradually, like a sunset so slow you don't notice the sky darkening until suddenly you re-standing in the dark. When people talk about someone leaving out of nowhere, they're usually describing their own surprise, not the reality of what happened. Because for the person who left, there was no out of nowhere. There was a long, winding road of unmet needs, unheard words, and unanswered emotional calls. The breaking point isn't really a break at all. It's more like the final grain of sand that tips the scale, so insignificant on its own that it seems absurd. It could change anything. But it's never about that one grain. It's about the accumulated weight of everything that came before. When nothing changed, their mind chose peace over people. This is the moment that seems incomprehensible to those left behind, but perfectly logical to those who leave. It's not cruelty, it's not cowardice, it's a fundamental biological and psychological truth. Humans will always, eventually, choose survival. And when staying means losing yourself piece by piece, leaving becomes an act of self-preservation. The mind has a remarkable capacity for protection. When external circumstances become toxic to our well-being, our psyche will create distance in whatever way it can. Sometimes that distance is emotional, even while we remain physically present. We become versions of ourselves that can withstand the environment, even if those versions are smaller, quieter, more withdrawn. But there's only so long a person can live as a diminished version of themselves before something has to give. Silence is their final boundary. After all the words that weren't heard, all the explanations that led nowhere, all the vulnerability that was met with indifference or defensiveness, silence becomes the only boundary that feels truly protective. Not because they don't have more to say. They might have volumes left unspoken, but they've learned that their words don't change the situation, so they stop spending them. This silence isn't about punishment, though it's often perceived that way. It's not about making someone suffer or creating guilt. It's about recognizing that some conversations will never reach resolution. Some relationships will never transform into what we need them to be. And some people will never understand our experience, no matter how many ways we try to explain it. The silence is an acknowledgement of reality. It's accepting what is, rather than continuing to fight for what could be. For the person who leaves, there's often a profound sense of peace that accompanies this decision. Even if it's tinged with sadness, it's the peace of no longer contorting yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your shape. The peace of no longer explaining yourself to people who were never truly listening. The peace of finally putting yourself first. For those who remain, the silence can feel cruel, confusing, or cowardly. Why didn't they just tell me? Becomes the haunting question. But this question often misses its own answer. Because they did tell you in 100 small ways that were easy to miss if you weren't really paying attention. In the changes in their tone, in the way they stopped bringing up certain topics, in the increasing space between their words, in the way their eyes glazed over during conversations that once animated them. The signs were there. They were just written in a language of exhaustion and resignation that is easy to overlook when you are not fluent in the dialect of someone slowly giving up. For the person who left, there's often no satisfaction in the departure, no triumph in the freedom, just a quiet, necessary grief. They're mourning not just what was, but what could have been if circumstances were different. If they had been heard, if change had come, if patience had been rewarded with growth. These departures teach us something profound about human connection and the limits of our capacity to endure unmet needs. They remind us that every relationship exists on borrowed time when one person is consistently doing all the bending, all the understanding, all the accommodating. They show us that love, friendship, or loyalty without reciprocity is unsustainable, that communication requires two people to work, that patience without progress is just waiting for nothing. And perhaps most importantly, they reveal that sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is to stop setting ourselves on fire to keep others warm. If you've been on either side of this experience, you know its particular brand of pain. If you've been left, the confusion and hurt are real and valid. But consider that your confusion might be the answer itself. If you truly didn't see it coming, it might mean you weren't seeing the person at all. If you've been the one to leave, you know the weight of that choice. The guilt that sometimes accompanies self-preservation, the second-guessing, the wondering if you tried hard enough, stayed long enough, gave enough chances. But you also know the relief, the ability to breathe fully again, the reclamation of yourself. Not every departure requires an explanation. Not every ending needs to be understood by everyone involved. Sometimes the most honest thing we can do is to quietly close a door that we've been holding open for far too long, exhausting ourselves in the doorway, hoping someone would notice we were tired of standing there. The people who vanish without explanation aren't usually running from something. They're finally, quietly, choosing themselves after a long period of choosing everyone else. And perhaps that's not a disappearance at all. Perhaps it's the first time they've truly been present for themselves in a very long time. Save this if you felt it. Because if these words resonated somewhere deep in your chest, you either understand what it means to leave, or you relearning what it means to stay too long in spaces that no longer serve your soul. The silent departure isn't a mystery. It's a message we should all learn to read, that people will only ask to be seen, heard, and valued so many times before they stop asking altogether. And when the asking stops, the leaving has already begun.